Hey guys, and welcome back. So here's the sim that I have, and I'm gonna create a bound node. I'm gonna go to frame 240, which is the last one. I'm gonna connect this bound and see how big. Let me template this. See how big the domain is, and that's because we have pieces that are flying far away from the geometry, and that's fine. So what we want, let me scale this down. Let's say this is our domain and we did delete some stuff. Let's say this is our domain and this is what we want to use for the sim. It's still very, very big. Okay, we need a huge amount of voxels, a very high res sim to capture all the details so that when we get really close we see the actual debris of trail of each geometry or each piece. Okay, but to capture all this we need a very high res volume. Okay, so we're not going to do that. This is not going to work. This is pretty much impossible. So the next thing is to cluster this or separate it into groups. But if we go to the first frame and say, okay, I'm gonna group everything here into a group called A, everything here into group called B, C, and D. Okay, this is the first frame. When we step through, we don't know how these are going to be mixed. For example, we can get one piece from group A going like this, and then everything else from group A is going this way. So the domain is going to end up very, very big, and we don't want that. We want to cluster them by their end position or mid position. And what this will allow us to do is basically know that if we cluster this part, these pieces here, they're all together. We don't know where they came from. Okay, but this is not bad because we are trying to group them based on where they're gonna end up. Let me draw a box. I'll explain this in a you hide everything. So let's say we have a box and let's scatter some points. And let's paranoid this. So what we're doing now is we're fracturing this, and let's say we had an explosion on each corner. Okay, one explosion that's going to move the pieces like this. All this corner is going to be like this, and then the same thing here, the pieces are going to go this way. And then we want to cluster this because we cannot use one domain because the pieces are flying very far off. And so what we want to do is to cluster them by the corner. And if we do that, let's say these pieces like this, they are transformed here, something like this. If they end up in that position, then great, but that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is once the explosion goes off, pieces from this area are also going, they have a very high chance of getting inside this domain. Pieces from here will fly towards this part. Pieces from here will fly towards this part. So we will end up with big domains if we use the initial position. What we need to use is we need to use the end position where the pieces landed. And then from there we say, okay, these guys are now together, we're going to group them. And we have to pick an interesting frame for our sim to figure out where the pieces landed and how it's best to group them. And we're going to pick, I picked the frame, I think 240. Yeah, I picked the last frame. but we could use something in between because sometimes the end frame is not ideal. So I prefer to pick something in between the like in the center, maybe around 180 or something like that, where the pieces are not at the end yet but almost there. So that gives us enough information to, or a good information to use to separate the pieces. And the idea is to use this as a point cloud and then provide a second point cloud and cluster them, and that's going to give us these guys together, these pieces together, these pieces together, and these pieces together. When they where they came from, it doesn't matter because that is going to be known. We don't have to worry. It's going to be this size. Okay, that's the maximum. So that's the approach. We're going to use a different frame, most likely the end or something towards the end, cluster based on that, and then copy that clustering information back into the original geometry and separate each cluster and work on it individually. So continue. We'll start implementing that in the next video. Thank you guys for watching and see you in a bit.